You believe you are a good person. You believe your compassion makes you noble. You believe your willingness to help others is proof of your character. And for most of your life, you have probably worn that belief like armor, quietly proud of the fact that you are not like the selfish people of the world. But there is something you must understand, something most people never realize until it is far too late. Your kindness is not always a strength. Sometimes it is an invitation. There are people walking this earth who can sense excessive compassion the way predators sense weakness in a herd. Not because they are cartoon villains, not because they wake up plotting evil, but because human beings are far more primitive than we like to admit. Before you speak a single word, you're evaluated in less than a second: your posture, your tone, your emotional availability, your boundaries, or lack of them. Ancient neurological machinery scans you and asks one silent question: is this person strong or consumable? And if you have spent your life believing that endless empathy makes you virtuous, there is a painful possibility you must confront. You may have trained the world to consume you. Pause for a moment. Look at your life, not the version you explain to others, but the one you experience in private. Think about the conversations that drain you. Think about the people who only appear when they need something. Think about the strange exhaustion that follows certain relationships, the kind of fatigue sleep does not cure. Somewhere in this video, a face is going to rise into your awareness. You won't have to search for it. Recognition will be immediate. When it happens, do not look away. That moment of discomfort is the beginning of clarity. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote that the great turning points of our lives occur when we gather the courage to rename what we were taught to fear and recognize it as strength. For centuries, humanity has romanticized self-sacrifice. You were taught that goodness means availability, that love means endurance, that loyalty means staying, even when staying destroys you. But Nietzsche saw through this illusion. He understood that what society often calls morality is, in many cases, simply a system designed to keep useful people useful. Ask yourself something difficult. Who benefits from your inability to say no? Who thrives when you ignore your limits? Who quietly relaxes knowing you will carry weight they refuse to lift? You were never directly commanded to abandon yourself. The conditioning was softer than that. It came disguised as praise. You're so reliable. You're the strong one. I don't know what I'd do without you. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, your identity fused with being the one who absorbs impact. But here is the truth. Few are willing to speak aloud. There is nothing noble about slowly disappearing. There is nothing enlightened about emotional self-erasure. A candle that burns for everyone else eventually collapses into wax. Today we are going to perform an autopsy, not on the people around you, but on the patterns that have been quietly draining your life force. Because there are certain individuals you must never try to save, not because they are evil, not because they are beyond redemption, but because your attempt to redeem them will destroy you first. And if you believe you already know who these people are, I want you to stay especially alert. The final type we will discuss is the one most intelligent, self-aware individuals fail to detect until enormous damage has already been done. Let us begin with the first, the eternal storm. You know this person. Their life is always on fire. Every week brings a new crisis. Every month unveils a fresh catastrophe. There is always a story, a breakdown, a betrayal, an emergency that demands immediate attention. At first, you believed their misfortune was real. You stepped forward because compassion is your reflex. You became the stabilizer, the problem solver, the calm center they ran toward whenever the winds rose. But watch closely. After every rescue, another disaster appears, then another, then another. At some point, a disturbing pattern emerges, one your generous nature may have resisted acknowledging. This is not random chaos, it is constructed chaos. Nietzsche observed that some individuals derive a strange psychological satisfaction from self-created turmoil. Crisis gives them identity. Drama guarantees attention. Disorder ensures they are never ignored. Without catastrophe, they feel invisible, so catastrophe becomes their habitat. And when you attach yourself to someone who lives inside perpetual turbulence, something subtle begins to happen. You do not calm their storm, you enter it. Their anxiety migrates into your nervous system. Their urgency dictates your emotional rhythm. Your peace becomes conditional, dependent on whether their life is stable this week. You believe you are offering them a lifeline. But over time you may notice something chilling. The lifeline begins to feel more like a leash. Here is the realization that changes everything. The eternal storm does not fear chaos. They fear stillness. Because stillness would force them to confront the one thing they have spent their life avoiding: responsibility. And as long as you keep arriving with solutions, comfort, and rescue, they are never required to develop it. Your help becomes their permission to remain unchanged. So step back, not in anger, not in cruelty, in clarity. Let the storm exist without your constant intervention. Only when chaos stops being rewarded does transformation become possible. Now, before we move to the second type, I want you to check something inside yourself. As you picture the eternal storm, do you feel resistance? Do you hear a voice saying, "But they need me"? Pay attention to that voice, because it is the same voice that has kept you trapped longer than necessary. And what comes next is even harder to recognize. The hungry ghost. The hungry ghost is not always loud. Sometimes they are soft-spoken. Sometimes they are wounded. Sometimes they are the person you would least want to suspect, which is exactly why they are so dangerous to someone like you. The hungry ghost is defined by a void that cannot be filled. You give them time, they want more. You give them energy, they lean harder. You give them reassurance, they return with deeper insecurity. You give them love, and somehow, it is still not enough. At the beginning, their gratitude feels overwhelming. They thank you with intensity. They tell you that no one has ever shown up for them the way you do. In their eyes, you are not just helpful, you are exceptional. And if you are honest, it feels good. To be needed is one of the most intoxicating emotional experiences available to a human being. It gives you purpose, it gives you identity, it whispers that your existence matters. But watch what happens over time. Gratitude slowly fades, expectation replaces it. What was once appreciated becomes assumed. What was once requested becomes demanded, often without words. And the first time you hesitate, the atmosphere shifts. There may be silence, there may be disappointment. There may be subtle guilt placed gently on your shoulders. Suddenly, your generosity is no longer a gift, it is an obligation. Here is the darker psychological layer few people talk about. The hungry ghost often resents the person who feeds them, not consciously perhaps, but deeply. Because every act of generosity highlights their dependence. Every time you provide what they cannot provide for themselves, you become a mirror, and that mirror reflects something they do not want to see. Nietzsche understood this phenomenon well. He wrote extensively about resentment, the quiet hostility that grows inside those who feel powerless. When someone is repeatedly reminded of their own inadequacy, admiration can curdle into bitterness. So the very kindness you believe strengthens the relationship may, beneath the surface, be eroding it. You cannot fill a void someone is committed to deepening. Read that again, not with your mind, but with your memory. How many times have you given more, only to discover that more simply reset the baseline? There is a painful but liberating truth hidden here. Sometimes the most compassionate act is refusal, not punishment, not abandonment. Refusal. When you stop feeding the hungry ghost, one of two things happens. Either they begin reluctantly to learn self-sufficiency, or they search for another host. Both outcomes return something priceless to you, your life force. Now, before we go further, pause internally for a moment. Is there someone in your life whose needs seem endless? Someone for whom no amount of support ever creates stability? Notice the emotional reaction arising in you as you think of them. Guilt, fear, loyalty? Good. We are getting closer to the truth. But what we discuss next is more unsettling, because it is harder to detect. The smiling enemy. Direct enemies are almost a relief. When someone opposes you openly, your nervous system knows what to do. You create distance, you protect yourself. But the smiling enemy does not attack from the front. They stand beside you. They celebrate you, at least outwardly. When something good happens in your life, they are quick to offer congratulations. Their tone is warm. Their smile appears genuine. And yet, something feels slightly off. You cannot always name it. You may even scold yourself for sensing it. Don't be paranoid, you tell yourself. They're happy for me. But watch carefully. You share a success, and they attach a caution. You describe a new opportunity, and they highlight a risk you hadn't considered. You express excitement, and they remind you how easily things can fall apart. Individually, these responses appear reasonable, even caring. But over time, a pattern emerges. They are planting seeds, seeds of hesitation, seeds of self-doubt, seeds that quietly ask, what if you fail? Here is the psychological mechanism beneath it. Your growth confronts them with their stagnation. Your courage illuminates their fear. And rather than rise to meet their own potential, some individuals attempt, unconsciously or deliberately, to reduce yours. Nietzsche compared such people to poisonous spiders, creatures that appear still and harmless while weaving webs designed to entangle anything that moves too freely. The smiling enemy does not need to destroy you outright. They only need to slow you down. A subtle doubt at the wrong moment can change the course of a life. Understand this clearly. Not everyone who supports you deserves access to your inner world, and not everyone who has known you for years is equipped to witness who you are becoming. The defense here is not confrontation, it is discretion. Move with quiet confidence. Share your plans selectively. Allow results, not intentions, to speak on your behalf. Some journeys must unfold in protected silence. Now, take another internal inventory. Has a face appeared, someone who seems supportive, but after every conversation you feel slightly smaller? Do not ignore that sensation. Your nervous system detects patterns long before your intellect permits you to acknowledge them. What comes next, however, is even more psychologically sophisticated: the weaponized wound. At first glance, this person appears almost sacred. Their suffering is real. Their history is heavy. You see their pain, and because you are not indifferent, you respond. Empathy rises naturally within you, but over time, something complex begins to reveal itself. Their pain is no longer just an experience, it becomes an identity. Every discussion circles back to what they have endured. Every boundary you attempt to establish is gently dissolved by a reminder of how much they have survived. If you understood what I've been through, after everything that happened to me, you know I'm not strong like you. These phrases are not always manipulative in intention, but they are powerful in effect, because they make your boundaries feel immoral. If you step back, you feel cruel. If you prioritize your needs, you feel selfish, so you remain. And in remaining, you unknowingly reinforce a dangerous structure, one in which their suffering grants them authority over your energy. Nietzsche warned that unchecked pity can become a vehicle for nihilism. a force that slowly drains vitality from both people involved. When you repeatedly rescue someone who refuses growth, you validate their helplessness. You teach their nervous system that collapse will be met with support, and therefore collapse becomes safer than transformation. But here is the moment that reveals everything. Try to leave. Try gently to reclaim your space. Watch what happens. The wounded may transform into the accuser. Your exhaustion becomes betrayal in their story. Your boundary becomes abandonment. Why? Because every narrative needs a villain, and if their identity is built around suffering, your independence threatens the entire structure. You cannot save someone who has made weakness their permanent residence. Compassion does not require captivity. You are allowed to care without carrying. Now breathe for a moment. We are about halfway through this descent, and what comes next requires even greater honesty from you. Because the fifth type is not dramatic, not emotional, not chaotic. They are something far more immovable, the stone mind. The stone mind is not loud. They do not arrive with chaos. They do not drain you with endless need. In fact, from a distance they often appear stable, even intelligent. But proximity reveals something different: rigidity. Nietzsche once wrote that convictions are more dangerous enemies of truth than lies. A lie can be corrected, evidence can dismantle it, but a conviction, especially one fused to identity, becomes nearly indestructible. The stone mind does not lack intelligence. They lack permeability. You present facts, they reinterpret them. You show patterns, they dismiss them. You offer wisdom, they debate it endlessly. Not because they are seeking truth, but because they are protecting their existing worldview. Watch their life carefully and you will notice repetition. The same destructive relationships, the same professional mistakes, the same self-sabotaging habits appearing again and again like a looped recording. You step in, believing clarity will help them. You explain, you reason, you bring evidence, memory, examples, and for a moment it feels like they are listening. But nothing changes, because the stone mind does not want transformation. They want validation. Being wrong is not merely uncomfortable to them, it is destabilizing. To admit error would require restructuring their identity, and that level of psychological renovation feels like annihilation. So they defend, even against reality itself. Nietzsche observed that the snake which cannot shed its skin must perish. Growth demands the painful act of releasing outdated versions of ourselves, but the stone mind clings to old skin until it suffocates them. Here is the realization that liberates you. You cannot reason someone out of a position they did not reason themselves into. You cannot force awareness into a consciousness organized around avoidance. And most importantly, it is not your responsibility to evolve another adult. Save your guidance for those who are still capable of intellectual humility, the rare individuals who can say, "Teach me," without feeling diminished. Let consequences educate the stone mind. Reality is a far more persuasive teacher than you will ever be. Now pause again. As we move deeper, notice what is happening inside you. Perhaps you are beginning to see that your exhaustion was never random. It had architecture. And yet, the final type we must discuss eclipses them all. Because this one does not merely drain you, this one reshapes your life. The scorpion nature. There is an ancient story about a scorpion that asks a frog to carry it across a river. The frog hesitates, afraid of being stung. The scorpion argues logically, "If I sting you, we both drown." Halfway across, the scorpion stings anyway. As the water closes around them, the frog gasps, "Why would you do this?" And the scorpion replies with terrifying simplicity, "It is my nature." Some people enter your life as lessons disguised as relationships. The scorpion nature is not defined by a single mistake. Not by one betrayal, not by an isolated moment of weakness. It is defined by pattern. They lie, and you forgive. They betray, and you rationalize. They apologize, and you hope. Hope is what binds you to them, because hope allows you to reinterpret history. It whispers that this time will be different, that the pain had meaning, that your loyalty will eventually be rewarded with transformation. But watch carefully. What actually changes? Often not their character, only their strategy. They learn which words reopen the door, which gestures soften your defenses, which promises keep you available. Adaptation is not the same as evolution, and beneath the performance, the stinger remains intact. Nietzsche warned that hope, when misplaced, can prolong human torment, because it persuades you to remain inside environments that are actively dismantling you. Every return costs you something invisible but irreplaceable. A fragment of trust, a layer of innocence, a piece of your emotional architecture. And then something even more dangerous happens. They begin to lose respect for you, not because you are weak, but because you demonstrate repeatedly that your boundaries are negotiable. Understand this clearly. Respect requires friction. When there are no consequences, there is no reverence. So what must you do when you finally recognize the scorpion? You must perform what feels like an emotional amputation. Not slowly, not halfway, not symbolically, completely. Because proximity to a repeat betrayer is not compassion, it is self-abandonment. Yes, it will hurt. Yes, you will grieve, not only the person but the future you imagined with them. But pain that protects you is infinitely wiser than comfort that destroys you. Now, look back across your life. The eternal storm, the hungry ghost, the smiling enemy, the weaponized wound, the stone mind, the scorpion nature. You can see them now, can't you? Perhaps not all at once. Perhaps in fragments, memories rearranging themselves as understanding replaces confusion. And with that understanding, another emotion may be surfacing. Guilt. A quiet voice asking, "Am I becoming selfish?" Listen carefully. That voice was installed by those who benefited from your overextension. You were taught a version of morality that kept you useful, but not necessarily fulfilled. Nietzsche described morality as the herd instinct within the individual. Societies survive by encouraging behaviors that maintain cohesion. Self-sacrifice is praised because it stabilizes groups. But you are not here merely to stabilize others at the cost of your own existence. You are here to live, to expand, to experience the full voltage of your potential. And that becomes impossible when your energy is perpetually siphoned away. Here is the shift, the rebirth that very few people allow themselves to experience. The moment you stop trying to rescue the unrescuable, something extraordinary happens. Energy returns, not dramatically at first, but steadily, like circulation flowing back into a limb that had fallen asleep. Clarity follows. Decisions that once felt agonizing become obvious. The fog lifts. You no longer negotiate endlessly with your own intuition. And then, perhaps most beautiful of all, peace begins to replace tension. Not the fragile peace that depends on everyone else behaving well, but the durable peace that comes from knowing you are no longer betraying yourself. You discover something startling in this reclaimed space. Your life force was never insufficient. It was misallocated, given to black holes instead of gardens. Because here is another truth rarely spoken aloud. There are people worthy of your compassion. People who receive your support and transform it into growth. People who do not just take your light, they reflect it. People who walk beside you rather than climb onto your shoulders. When you stop over-investing in those committed to stagnation, you finally have the resources to recognize and nurture those who are committed to evolution. This is not the death of your kindness, it is the maturation of it. Compassion without boundaries is self-betrayal, but compassion guided by discernment, that is wisdom. Now, before we close, I want to ask you something quietly. As you listened, did you feel resistance at certain moments? Did part of you want to defend someone, to explain them, to soften what you already know is true? That resistance is natural, because awareness changes relationships. And change, even when necessary, asks something courageous of you. It asks you to outgrow versions of yourself that survived by overgiving. But understand this: closing the wound is not cruelty, it is self-respect. And self-respect is the foundation upon which every meaningful life is built. Once you see these patterns, you cannot unsee them. Your standards will rise. Your tolerance for manipulation will shrink. Your presence will become more deliberate. Some people will fall away when this happens. Let them. What remains will be real. Now there is only one question left, and it is not philosophical, it is practical. Will you act on this understanding, or will you return to familiar exhaustion? Awakening is not a moment. It is a decision made repeatedly. Choose yourself, not in arrogance, not in isolation, but in recognition that a person who abandons themselves cannot build a life worth inhabiting. Your new life does not begin when everyone understands your boundaries. It begins the moment you enforce them. And if something inside you shifted today, even slightly, then this was not just another video you watched and forgot. It was a mirror. Most people will look away from mirrors like this. Comfort is seductive, illusion is easy, but you stayed, which tells me something important about you. You are ready for truth, even when it is uncomfortable. So if you are serious about stepping into that truth, make a decision right now. Subscribe to this channel, not as a casual gesture, but as a commitment to your own psychological evolution, because everything we explore here is designed for one purpose: to strip away the illusions that keep you small and reveal the architecture of real power. Most people will scroll past ideas like these. They will choose distraction over transformation. But you are still here, so subscribe and step fully into the life that begins when you stop bleeding for those who only know how to take and start building with those who know how to grow. This is not the end of your compassion, it is the beginning of your discernment. This is not abandonment, it is awakening. And once you awaken, there is no returning to sleep.